Let's add a little bit on the same topic from the book People of the Earth, just to give a bit more information from a slightly different perspective, because these are archaeological evidences that are interpreted by multiple groups in slightly different ways, sometimes very different ways, but nonetheless, this is the ancient hunter-gatherers in the Americas. Sites mentioned in the text are indicated, so we have all these nice sites spreading down and over and then down into South America, all the way down to Monteverde, and some uncertainties here in Caverna da Pedra Pintada, however it's pronounced. So this is combination of hunting and gathering, and this is archaeology but largely unknown. Okay, so we already talked a little bit on how they might have come down, but let's look at the major cultural developments in the Americas 15,000 years ago to AD 1500, so just about 600 years ago. Or 500 and some years ago. So we are going here to the middle of the deglaciation that was already happening. So we were still cold, and then we had the Holocene climatic optimum, and then here we are with the Roman warm period and so on, and we will come into the other Holocene details as we go forward. So we are looking at general cultural development in the Americas alone, so developments elsewhere can be compared here with the things we already talked about in terms of Magdalenian culture in Western Europe, at the same time farming in Southwest Asia, in the middle of the Holocene climatic optimum, rise of cities in Near East, Sumer and ancient Egyptian civilizations, Shang civilization in China, classical Greece, Roman Empire that I just mentioned, and the European Age of Discovery leading to the 1492 to whatever period when Columbus went around, and then there were other discoveries between 1499 and 1522. I think that's generally referred to as the Age of Discovery. Here we have various sites: Galt, Meadowcraft, Cactus Hill, Monteverde, Mesa, Broken Mammoth, Clovis. We'll talk a bit more about this, or we already talked in the other podcast. Megafaunal extinctions are known here. We looked at how arrival of humans and megafaunal extinctions match up, except in Africa, where coevolution explains the least number of mammal extinctions, megafaunal extinctions. Paleo-Indian cultures throughout the Americas during the same period here. Archaic cultures with some unknown beginnings and unknown ends, but they are found archaeologically over here with various evidences. Woodland cultures we will look at again in chapter 13. Mound builder cultures in east and southwest, Pueblo cultures in the southwest, and the other things we will look at in chapter 13 include cultivation of native, or at least maize cultivation in Mexico, cultivation of native plants in eastern North America and Midwest, maize cultivation in the Southwest, which right now has lots of Spanish influence as well, but that's much more recent. Maize and bean cultivation in eastern and North America and Midwest, and the European contact after the during the Age of Discovery, of course. There is some, of course, we know that the Europeans, or at least Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Viking, Eric the Red, may have been in North America. It's pretty clear that he was in the Nova Scotia region much before Columbus, 500 years or more before, and the Chinese claim they were in North America around the 13th century as well. But what we know much better is the European contact during the age of discovery. Looking at the Bering land bridge during the last glacial maximum, which we have looked at in the previous podcast as well, this is reconstructed by the latest research. Land bridge is thought to have been the major route by which humans first settled in Alaska and the Americas immediately after the Ice Age. So we are looking at tundra and steppe, which covers most of it, still coming out of the Ice Age, not completely into the Holocene. Woodlands, some refugia kind of situation there. Glacier pieces left still over Alaska, and submerged areas are shown here in terms of the ocean. So obviously the land bridge would have been a good place to cross over. So just briefly, the summary: the first humans to settle the Americas crossed from northeastern Asia, probably across the Bering Land Bridge, central Beringia, but the date of their arrival is still controversial. No archaic humans ever settled in the Americas, which were colonized by Homo sapiens alone. So this is unique for the New World. Most experts believe that first settlements occurred much later, perhaps at the very end of the Ice Age, as early as 15,000 years ago or even earlier. There is evidence for widespread but sparse human occupation in the Americas south of the Great Ice Sheet, dating to about 14,000 years ago, perhaps some thousands of years earlier. Their successors, the Clovis people of North America, flourished between 13,200 to 12,900 years ago, but the beginnings and the end are kind of uncertain. After 13,000 years ago, many species of Ice Age animals, large and small, became extinct, so Native American hunter-gatherers diversified their economies to take full advantage of the local resources. Obviously, it was a large land with lots of natural resources, which is still true in terms of comparing to Europe and Asia, where the exploitation by hominins has happened over a much longer period. Paleo-Indian groups continued to hunt bison in the North American plains, this being the only area where any large animals survived. Big game hunting flourished here until historic times, which brings us to about 5,000 years ago. An always sparse population of hunter-gatherers adapted to the harsh desert conditions of the West and flourished there right into the historic times. Most such groups anchored themselves to reliable water supplies such as small lakes and marshes. In the eastern woodlands, hunter-gatherers subsisted of deer and other small game, as well as a wide variety of plant foods. As time passed, both fishing and birds assumed greater importance, as did the fall nut harvests. The densest populations flourished in fertile river valleys, along estuaries, and by lake shores where more sedentary settlements developed and hunting territories became more circumscribed. More complex hunter-gatherer societies developed in the Pacific Northwest and in the mid-western river valleys, as well as along the California coast, all cultures depending on abundant, seasonally predictable aquatic, animal, and plant resources. In other parts of the Americas, archaic cultures based on hunting and foraging survived until the adoption of native plant cultivation or maize agriculture within the last 6,000 years. In the Arctic and southernmost South America, hunter-gatherer societies flourished until historic times, so again 5,000 years ago. In the far north, there was regular interchange of ideas with the people of Siberia, and much later with the Norse in the east, the only contact between ancient America and the Old World until Columbus's day, or the beginning of the Age of Discovery. Okay, so we'll leave this here and then come back and look at more recent times in the Holocene in the next podcast. So we'll build this story through the Holocene into the modern times and look at modern human beings, our climate impacts, environmental impacts, ecological impacts, and then see how we are responding to our own impacts and how we are trying to navigate the future by trying to reduce our impacts and adapting to the impacts we have already created. So we'll go through the main book, but I will keep adding little bits from this book as appropriate along the way. Okay?